So Rabbi Mordecai here. This is a little bit of a different conversation. And normally we're talking about different ideas about building new societies and new economies and new systems of thought. That's like really where the focus of my particular tour is. Like it's like, you think about just talking about it with my wife, just like this whole concept of like in the future, like people having like hotels that are going to be like, I was giving this kind of like analogy of like talking to like my future children and explaining to them like there was a time where if you went to a hotel there was like a doorman, and there was a person who worked behind the desk, and then there was a person who took your suitcases up to your room, and there was a maid, and there was room service that was delivered by a person. And in the future that's not going to be the case. Everything's going to be automation. And like even in the future, like you're not even going to have to even worry about ordering, right? Because artificial intelligence is already going to know what type of food you like at this particular time of the day or the year, based off of various different conditions, right? So it's like you start to think about like how the human being is gonna like have to like evolve and mature to higher state. But this particular conversation is a little bit different. It's a very, very important one. It's one that's very deep. It's very holy. It's a big halakhic conversation. It's a social conversation. It's a community conversation. And so the question is, you know, how do we deal with situations where people, make, say they make a mistake, or maybe they do something wrong, and how do we respond to that? You know what I mean? Like how do we respond to that? And on a deeper level, like how do we respond to that with ourselves? Like when we make mistakes, when we do the wrong thing, right? When we maybe say the wrong thing, or we do the wrong action, right? After we finish that mistake, how do we think about ourselves? How do we evolve? Do we evolve? Like this mistake that we're making, or this thing that we're doing, like how much of it is a part of our personality? How much of it is a part of a story that we have about ourselves and who we really are and what our capacity is, and like how much of it is like, what's going on? How do we look at ourselves when we make mistakes? So a few days ago, or a couple of days ago, before Shabbos, you know, um, you know, a friend of mine, who's a very like famous person, was on an interview and having a conversation, like kind of like a open conversation. And there were things that were said that were profound, and then there were things that were said that like weren't weren't clear, and it created a discussion around what was really meant, right? There's when I was in yeshiva, one of the last masectot we learned was beitza, which is like eggs, right? And one of the big ideas in the sugiyot we learned was like this idea of like giving the wrong impression, meaning that like even if you weren't doing something that was against the halacha, like as it related to like say preparing for a yom tov, or you know setting aside a certain amount of eggs or food to be able to use for yom tov or for Shabbos or whatnot, whatever, and doing it in a way that someone else sees you, they can maybe think that you're violating, that you're violating Shabbat, right? Or you're violating a Yom Tov, right? You're violating. So the fact that you're giving impression or that could be received, it's a sword to do it, right? And so when it comes to this idea of, communication, that, having the right intentions and the right focus is definitely how Hashem's going to judge us, but we're also judged by the application, right? And how that application is understood. That's like in Beta, like someone wants to prepare for Yom Tov and they want to do specific things, and they have all the best intentions, but if someone else sees it and doesn't really understand what they're doing, then that person's chayv. Not the person who's judging, but the person who created, in a way, a stumbling block for that other person intellectually, right? So that's the scenario. Now, there's another idea when it comes to dealing with people who convert into Judaism, right? And in this idea of saying that, what if this person comes in to the Jewish world? This is like a real discussion in the Gemara. Someone comes into the Jewish world, and after they convert, they still are seen doing things, or maybe even professing ideas from their former life. Like, how do we deal with that person, right? And unanimously, we're taught to be people that rush to assist, rush to help, rush to educate, rush to nurture, right? Because it's an evolution process for that person who goes through that process of a spiritual transformation to become a gear to all of reality, right? And so when that person does something or says something or does something so what do we do about it? Like, what do we do about it? Garrett does something. Wow, how could you believe that? How could you do that? No, we don't do that in Judaism. We don't say that in Judaism. So what does it mean? So a person does it. So what do we do? Now today, in our society, what do we do? Someone says something that could potentially be harmful to me in my life and to others. We have to stop it immediately. We have to stop it immediately before it gets out of control, and to send a message to anyone else who wants to walk down this path. Right? We got to stop it. We got to shut it down immediately. Done, wiped out, over with. But what happens when that person is your brother or your sister or your mom or your dad or your cousin, your nephew, your niece, your auntie, your uncle? What happens when it's your best friend? Someone who risked their life for you. What do? You destroy them? Wait, they did the same exact thing to a person that if you didn't know them, you wouldn't even hesitate to go after them and attack. But in this case, we're talking about your brother, right? We're talking about your cousin, talking about your relative, we're talking about someone you're connected. So how do you do? And if somebody says like, "Oh, well, I'm just so disappointed. I can't believe that this person said that. How could they do that? I thought of them so differently. I'm so disappointed." Okay, so you know what? You know what that says about you? That says that you were only about taking, right? You saw this person and you saw their light and you saw how powerful they were and how gracious they were and how much Hashem has blessed them. And you just wanted to take from that, because if it was about giving, then it's like, oh, as this person makes a mistake or says this or says things or does things from their past, you know, I'm not gonna run to want to destroy. The Torah says that a convert's a newborn baby. That's what a convert is. So whatever, logic or superiority complex you want to execute from your goyish reality of living in galut and being around people who only crushed and destroyed. That's what Asaph is about. So now you're around them, so you pick this up, and so now you want to act it out. It's not Yaakov. It's not Yaakov. It's not. It's not. Yaakov didn't even want to go to war with the people that raped his daughter. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not Yaakov. Yaakov is not about going out and destroying people and destroying things. And he had superpowers, right? That's where his children got them from, according to our Midrashim. So what do? We destroy our brother? Let's get him. He said wrong. Let's end his life. All the potential, everything that could be created, everything in the future. Who cares? I'm mad right now. That's a person that has a ruach. That sounds nefesh to me. And for sure, that's not neshama. That's nefesh. That's the Asaph energy. Sure, brother. Come on, what are you gonna do? People make mistakes. So that's one frame of it, right? So, but then there's another frame. And this frame has not ever even been explored, maybe ever in Jewish thought, which is communicating Jewish ideas to African Americans, right? Unbelievable, right? We could talk about Rav Chaim Kanetsky and his ruling on the Igbo Jews. You could talk about all the different books that have been written by all types of scholars and historians about these people and the transatlantic slave trade and 1.7 million, Africans being sold into slavery from the west of Africa, 1.3 million of them being Igbos. The tradition of the Igbo people, that their ancestors were, many of them were took to North America and the islands. This is their thing. I mean, come on, we can't make this stuff up. Come on. This is like really going on. Rav Chaim Kanetsky really gave that ruling. There's other Beit Din that have also gave rulings on these things. These are people who came to America over 100 years. Over 100 years of Black people in America identifying themselves as Israelites, identifying themselves as Hebrews, having their religious organizations. Right? That's a real thing. Now we want to say, okay, I don't want to say they're Jewish. Okay, that's a separate point. The separate point is all the way from Africa to here, there's this concept that they are connected to the children of Israel. This is the thing. Like, what do you want to do? What do you think? Michael Jackson was amazing. He's just a random guy. You don't think that was a Jewish neshama? You don't think Michael Jordan was a Jewish neshama? I'm saying, like, these people are like out of this planet. They captivated the world. Okay, maybe they're not. I don't know. But I'm an African American, and there's such a lack of information about history and our origins and where and this and that. It's all this big mystery. So you know what? I'm allowed to imagine. I'm allowed to have hope. I'm allowed to want to think of something that maybe you're saying it doesn't exist, but you know what? In my heart, it makes sense that it exists for me. And because there's no factual history and because it's been removed, you can't tell me that it's not. Because I can't even tell you if it is. And if I can't tell you that it is, you can't tell me that it's not. So we're at a standstill. But the point is, as a Black person who's had their identity in everything removed from them, everything is choshek, the whole thing is tohu vuhu, the whole thing. And I wanna find some bit of self-esteem and pride in myself about my existence. And I wanna say, I'm from the Bible, I mean something, I'm connected to God, I'm important. And because of that, you want to ridicule and chastise this dynamic. And don't get me wrong, there's people out there right now that are utilizing exactly what I just said for evil purposes. They're using it to mobilize, to hurt Klal Israel, to hurt all the people who've suffered and were identified as Jewish. Think about it. I mean, it's like a zechut in a way. Like you think about like all the people in the world that have died throughout history because they're Jewish. And then some people say, "Oh, well, you know, they weren't really Jewish." And how can you say that? How can you say that? I'm a Gary, so you're telling me I wasn't Jewish this whole time, my whole life? You're telling me I didn't have that special soul that's talked about in Lech Lecha, the soul called Avram, the soul from that part of the Shemayim, the part of the heavens that comes in that has a ratzon for Hashem, that makes a shavua before it comes into this world. You're telling me I didn't have that soul before I went into the mikvah in the same way that Abraham was that soul before he received a bris milah? So okay, so that's where we're at, right? That's where we're at. So what do we do about it? You know what I mean? How do we move forward from here? Because we're in a new era now, right? We're in a new era, we're in a new society. It's changing right in front of us at blazing speed. At blazing speed. And who wants to be left behind? Who wants to not be able to event? It's like you think about it. Rabbi Shimon, when he wrote the Zohar, him and his son, they buried themselves underground, right? They wanted to devoid themselves of all physical like consciousness. They just wanted to be purely in the makshava. No chance for the body to sin, nothing, right? Just pure, just channeling. They were only using their minds, makshava. They're thinking. This is the era that we're in now. The strength of the body doesn't matter. Being, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not in a labor-based society anymore. We're in the society of the upper consciousness, right? We're in that. That's the reality that's happening now. Now, you may not see that reality, right? They talk about people like Eliyahu Navi. They entered a reality that very few human beings have ever seen. They entered a reality that very few people have seen. This exists now. So it's important to be in that place of recognition of propensity, of potential, and where we're being pushed to as a society by God. And so when things like this happen and emerge, anybody that's prehistoric. Let's go out and let's go and destroy. To me, everything's an opportunity to build. Everything's an opportunity to build. And in fact, you have to ask a question when something arises. Okay, well, how can you build off of it? What are the opportunities here? So my friend, you know, who misspoke in errors, retracted it, and has continued to go out and do tshuva and apologize for any misconceptions. It's not the problem. This person's a newborn baby. I'm sorry, that's what it is. I don't care what was accomplished before and all these other things. Very good, very nice. That was a kalim that built That's the tree trunk that allowed the branches to have a place to grow. The branches and the fruits of the Torah, right? So we get that there's a trunk, we get the whole thing, but the point is saying that this person is a new baby in our reality in Klal Israel, with a massive responsibility and a massive platform and massive amounts of attention. And so that's what happened. Now, a lot of the concept around the misspeaking is not necessarily misspeaking. I analyze and I listen to this interview over and over again in points and clips and the whole thing. And what I heard was a Black person talking to other Black people. And that is something that if you're not from the culture, you're not going to understand what is being said, right? You're not going to understand what you're going to misinterpret it, because the way Black people are, we have been so deprived of our independent ability to find independent truth on our own, that as time has evolved, many of us went in so many different areas. Like the Black family, like you'll go to a Thanksgiving, and at Thanksgiving, you may have one of the cousins is a Muslim, one of the cousins is a Jew, one of the cousins is a Jehovah's Witness, one of the other cousins is a Baptist, the other cousin's a gangster. This person has a beauty salon, this person's, a Republican, this person's a conservative. I mean, I'm saying this is like Black people. It's all, and no one, and we still don't look at each other as being different. And it's a cultural thing for us not to overstep other people's beliefs. It's a very Jewish thing too, by the way. Like we don't overstep other people's beliefs. So my cousin who's Muslim, or my cousin who's a Jehovah's Witness, I'm going to try to talk to them in terms that they understand. I don't need to discount their God for me to be okay with what I have, right? I don't have to discount that. So some of the conversations, when Black people talk, sometimes they things about Christianity and ideas around it, and the idea of the just ideas that exist in Christianity could come up, right? And it's not cultural for us to shoot them down and be like, in the same way that if a Jewish person, someone who's born Jewish, like had a situation where, someone tries to evangelize them, or someone's trying to like missionize them or something, like, what I'm saying? Like Black people don't missionize each other, in that way, like, meaning that, like, obviously there's people, who go out and missionize, they go out and look for people and these types of things. But I'm saying in terms of family, right? In terms of family units, people who know each other, that's not the goal, right? So sometimes in Black culture, when you're talking, you're going to communicate certain things in a certain way. And you may utilize some of the language and some of the ideas and concepts of that culture you were formerly a part of, but directly congruent with the people you're talking to. So you may use some ideas, but that's just how Black people talk. It's not like, oh, because I'm like, I have family members, I have tons of people who have different belief systems than I do, right? And if I know an aspect of their wisdom that I can utilize to convey a Torah thought, a Torah idea, then from that space, um, um, from that space, I'm going to communicate with them. I mean, that's just what it is. That's our culture. That's Black culture. And it's the same thing that interfaith rabbis do. It's the same thing that, professors in Jewish studies, when they write books and give scholarly presentations, they will quote, other religious writers from other, other denominations, other religions, right? Because they're scholarly, they know. But in Black culture, people will talk, we talk differently to each other. I'm going to talk differently to my cousin who is a devoted Muslim versus my cousin who, when is a reformed Jew. You know what I mean? Or the cousin who's into, yoga and meditation. I'm just saying these are the type of diversities that exist in Black culture. And so because of that, there's a language that is an unspoken language that, we haven't really had to study. So this conversation, Black people amongst Black people, and not understanding the dynamic of the culture and how it functions, you can listen at it and be like, wow, it looks like your friend was agreeing or was in agreement or wasn't that or has like conflicting views. And it's like, no, he's talking to Black people. You're trying to analyze it through non-Black lenses, okay? Non-cultural lenses. Anybody who's Black will hear that and understand that my friend was literally trying to direct people back to the Torah and the mitzvah. That was the whole speech. They brought up Christianity. He didn't shoot it down, but he said everything that the Christian leader was speaking about was in conjunction with Moses and the laws, right? Everything in that whole interview was directing people back to the laws, statutes, and commandments. That was the whole thing. Hukim mishpatim, mitzvot. That was the whole focus. Now, if you look at it on the outside, it looks like no, that wasn't the focus. Like it seems like he has very conflicting views and conflicted guy. And anyways, so that's where we're at. That's what we're dealing with. How do we go forward? What type of people are we? Are we people that destroy? Are we people who create, build, use our mochim? I'm about creating. I'm about building. If someone falls, if someone makes a mistake, especially a ger, the most repeated mitzvah in the entire Torah is how to love the ger, because there's so many elements and there's so many layers to it and so much depth to that level of love that Hashem has for the ger, because the whole world was created for that neshama. That's why we honor the ger, because the whole world was created for that neshama. Okay, that neshama may come through a person who's born in Klal Israel, person's dad's a rabbi, whatever, person's, mom's a big teacher, whatever the point is, it doesn't matter where that's all, that person's not, came through an environment where the dad wasn't even have a bris milah. I mean, there's so many scenarios of how these souls come into the world, but the point is just saying these great souls, that this is the whole purpose of spirituality, was to gather these souls, or that's what Abraham was doing. He was trying to find all these souls that were like his soul, and he wanted them to collectively come together, have unconditional love for each other, and basically bring down the total redemption for humanity. That was the concept. That was his caravan. Those are the people he was looking for. And when you understand that, you understand the whole mission of everything. You understand who the people who are the proselytes who join Klal Israel. You see the people who are the Siddiqim in Klal Israel. They're all the same souls. They're all the same souls. This is only about souls. This is about the connection of souls and the elevation of souls. There's unique souls. So we have a one in our hands, a one that's a ger, one who went through that process. You could really question my friend, who's an NBA celebrity, and could spend his life in complete gashmias every day of his life, and he comes all the way to Israel, to Bnei Brak, and Meir Sharim, and Geula, and Maladafna, learning yeshiva, and then go through a gerut. Come on, man. You're gonna question that? Oh, because he said this. I mean, all that doesn't. He doesn't need anything. This is probably the lishma conversion ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on. I think mine's pretty lishma, to be honest with you. But the point is just saying that I don't know, maybe I don't know, was mine lishma? I don't know. I knew how great the Torah was. And I knew how great it was to do mitzvah before I converted. So maybe it wasn't lishma. I don't know. It's weird. It's a very interesting point. I don't know. It's the more you know, the less you know what makes it lishma. Anyways, so it's we're working on this. You know, we're building on this. And you can't say everything in one conversation, but I do want to just bring that point. That who are we as people? Who are we as individuals? So I'll leave you with this idea. It's a famous story the Baal Shem Tov brings up. And the Baal Shem Tov, he talks about like every night how when a person goes to sleep, their soul, an aspect of their soul departs from their body. And when their soul goes up to Shemaim, it goes into this heavenly court system where it has the answer for the deeds that it did or the prior day. Right? So anything you did on that day, that soul goes up when you go to sleep and it goes and it talks to Hashem. And Hashem gives a verdict based off of what is done. So Baal Shem Tov asks the question, it's like, wait, how can the pasuk tell us that we're judged in Shemayim when only the soul is in Shemayim? Only the soul is in Shemayim. Only the soul is in Shemayim. So how could you judge an entire person based off of the soul's account and the soul's testimony? What about the body? Every single body part is going to give testimony to who you are as a person. How you use that body. Everything that's given to us is from Hashem. Our body is completely given to us from Hashem for rent. And how we use that body will determine our experience in the next world. So if I have, like say I have reproductive organs, right? I mean, male, female, right? And I go and use those reproductive organs for the sake of my own pleasure alone and not to serve Hashem, not to bring life in the world, not to create shalom bias with my husband, not expressing a woman who's in a state of purity, a woman who's out of din, and that oneness with Hashem that comes through that process of being united with her husband. But if I use it for my own pleasure, that has nothing to do with anything but my own selfishness, that reproduction organ will be testifying against me in the next world. And say, Hashem, you gave this body part to use for holiness, to use to bring light into this world. And that person did not use it for that. They used it for their own selfish pleasure. And that body part could send a person to Gehenna. But the point is over here is that he asked a question about the body. What the body, Baal Shem Tov says, like the body is not there. So how does it work? In order for a judgment to enact, the soul and the body have to be together. They're partners. It's heavy stuff, man. It's heavy stuff. And so how do we reconcile? Baal Shem Tov says, when we come down, our soul goes up to the heavens and is judged, and then it comes back down. But the verdict is not given. It's different, right? Being judged and having the verdict are two different things. But the verdict happens when we come back into our body, wake up the next day, and usually we're going to see someone who's doing something similar or exactly like we were doing. And that the way that they're doing it is going to be directed towards us. It's going to affect us directly. And so the Torah says, the Baal Shem Tov says, that's how Hashem judges us. That's how Hashem judges us. And so he brings a Pasukim with Prophet Natan going to King David and telling King David about the story about this guy who only had like a sheep and, or something like this. And he had a small amount. And there was a rich person who had an abundance, but still came and stole from this person or took from this person just because they had the power to do it. And when Prophet Natan was telling the story to King David said, oh my God, this person deserves to die. And Prophet Natan said, this story is about you and Elisheva. You were the guy, the rich guy who took from the little guy. So in that same way, he created his verdict for himself. That's what we do when we see people doing things in life and we pass judgment on them. So my friend who made mistakes, who misspoke in certain areas, is he being utilized by Hashem as a channel for us to look at ourselves in certain areas about places that we misspoke, places that, we didn't take in full account, and we weren't maybe sensitive to the ramifications of our actions. I mean, that happens like what, 1 billion times every day, all around the world. So the way that we treat this situation is going to directly reflect how Hashem treats us in that same area. It's not by accident, right? So what would you want? How would you want that judgment for yourself? Would you want that judgment to be, oh, you know what? This person is out of line and they're a bad person, destroy them. Knowing that you are the person who's doing the same, you have the same nida in another area in your life. Not the same way, a different area. Recently, like I was by this girl that I met here, me and my wife, we went by her house for third meal, whatever. And this girl's going through the conversion process or whatnot. And long story short, she invited us over for third meal. We go over there and she had some friends there, right? And so a couple of the friends that were there, or one of the friends that was there was like a lady, like, I don't know, Caribbean, whatever, but like a, darkish type lady. And then the girl who I know that's there, the one I know is going through the conversion process, she's African American, right? So I'm over there giving like chizuk. The other third friend is a girl who's like converting or attempting to convert, and she's white and expresses like she has mental health issues, whatever. But the point is just saying we were all there, right? And so the next day, the girl that invited us over says that this girl was upset about some of the stuff I was talking about, like about the history of Black people and their connection, to the 12 tribes in Africa and the rulings of Avadi Yosef, whatever, these types of things. And she just, whatever, she'll just, I think the root of it is like this person is not stable. But the point is saying, I thought to myself that she started to call the girl that was hosting us and say like, oh, I don't agree with this guy and what he's saying. And it sounds like Black Hebrew Israelite stuff. Black Hebrew Israelites have no connection to the idea of Africa and connected to that destroys their whole power base. As soon as the ideas accept that that African Americans have a connection to Africa, you just the whole Hebrew Israelite thing's over. It's done. They only have strength because the people see them as a guiding light and a source of protection. Right? It's like Hamas for the Palestinians, right? They provide healthcare, all types of stuff, but then they go out and scare everybody away and then collect money for it. So anyway, so this girl goes and she says all this stuff, whatever. All my stuff is my stuff is Gemara based, source based. Right? That's reality to me. Like I never was introduced to a Torah where you could freestyle and just make up some idea, like, or somebody you heard someone someone said. You know what I mean? Like I just never got into that type of Torah. I just never was exposed to it. I converted, my rabbi converted me, was very stark. And then I came to Eretz Israel. I came to one of the starkest yeshivas in the world. and buried my head in the Gemara for like a half a decade, day in and day out. So that's where my head's at. So with this girl and this whole dynamic, I thought to myself, I said, should I call like the little place she's converting at and let them know that this girl's unstable and this and blah, blah, blah? Do I want to do that? And I said to myself, I said, hey, you know what? The whole thing is so weird. It's like one of these like weird things that doesn't make any sense. Like her taking that position the day after we all left on a good note, everything was positive, It's like weird, right? And that happened. And so I talked to myself, I said, I was really like fired up about it. I was like, I'm gonna call the seminary and I'm gonna let them know this girl's just whatever. And then I thought to myself, I said, hey, you know what? What if this is one of those like Baal Shem Tov moments in my life personally? That this person, I have so much power, more than they do as a person in the conversion process, person who's like in a vulnerable position just by that dynamic. And it's just the whole thing, it's just like the whole thing. It's just like, I just said to myself, is this an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? Keep it moving. Don't even pay attention to it and not get involved and don't bring judgment to someone else. Right? Like I just feel like it was one of those Baal Shem Tov moments where this person was displaying a certain behavior that maybe I was doing in my life somewhere, or maybe did in my life in the past. So by me not pursuing it, Hashem's not going to pursue me, right? So that's the way I looked at it. So I think the same thing goes for over here with my friend. And I put his name there. I don't know. I just don't feel like saying it over and over again because this is my job. You know what I'm saying? Like I, am connected to the African American community, and as an African American Jew, I'm there to support all Jews in general, but I'm focused on an aspect of our community, which is the African American aspect of our community, and a relationship with that to the greater African American community that's not Jewish or halakhically or whatever. And and bridging those gaps, and helping people out and being there for them and helping build better relations and more shalom and more opportunities. And I want to have these conversations with the Kyrie Irvins and the Kanye Wests. We can elevate these things. I think at the root, we all want the same things. We want to see a better world. We want to see a more unified world. We want to see the communities we come from who have been, abused and downtrodden to be able to prosper and experience happiness. Everybody wants that. The question is, how do we get there? And the power of the Torah and the wisdom of our sages is far superior to anything that exists. And so therefore we should not be scared about these conversations. We should look forward to them. And we should expect to be victorious, because it's not about our personal safety. It's about rebuilding the base of Mikdash. It's about the world having an idea of Hashem's rulership over the galaxy. And that's being able to have a world doing tshuva, a world, expressing unconditional love, a world where there's no thought of war, a world where there's no thought of poverty, a world where the idea of someone else lacking is painful. Not when I'm lacking, when someone else is lacking is painful. And so we get to that place by transforming our perception of reality. And so what I explained about the Baal Shem Tov as it relates to my friend, as we see the situation and we internalize this experience and look at ourselves and say, well, if this person is reflecting myself, how would I want God to treat me? How would I want my friends to treat me? How would I want the community to treat me? And then by acting that out, we've now elevated ourselves to a whole nother consciousness. I appreciate, everyone. And, we got to do better. And let's pray for everybody. And let's pray that everyone, gets past whatever klippas that are holding them back, and everyone does the proper tshuva. And sometimes there's breakdowns only to bring everything closer. And that's what moment we're at now. And, we should We should love. Even when we feel like it's not deserved, we should love. Baruch atah Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.